Oh, hey everybody. Good morning. Today is May 18th, 2018. It's my day 2.08. And after yesterday's video, I wanted to make a follow-up somewhat to say I'm alive. Um, and an observation somewhat. Um, when I was a kid, when I was in middle school, maybe is what I should say. Um, there was this really cool game that I'm going to say, and probably a lot of people go, yeah, I remember that game. But it was called Battletech, and it was put out by FASA. And it was basically a little miniature game. You would have a model of a robot, like kind of like almost this size, maybe a little bit bigger, and you play it on a hex board. And your giant robot was piloted by a person, but you would play the operator of the robot, and you could move, you could shoot, there were different things you could do, and it was all based on heat, which was kind of an interesting concept at the time. The idea that you had your robot could only do so many actions that generated heat per turn, and it could dissipate heat, and if you overheated, you would shut down, or you would do damage to part of your body or whatnot, the robot's body. But the idea, I guess, of controlling a robot, and being in control of that robot, looking out, picturing yourself as being the pilot and looking out, from the eyes, and of course you see your arms and whatnot. But later became Mech Warrior, was the role-playing game and whatnot, and we had a lot of fun with that. But the idea of looking out through your eyes and what you would consider to be, I guess, a first-person shooter point of view if you play video games, and not really being able to see yourself. Like, I can look in my reflection of the glass here and I can see myself, or I can look in the little window where it represents the camera and I can see myself, or we can look in a mirror and see ourselves. But if we lived in a world where there were no reflections, okay, and that was something, there was a Buck Rogers episode when they were on the Voyager, when they were the Searcher, the kind of once Buck Rogers jumped the shark and they brought Hawk on and anything else. But there was a planet of people they wore masks all the time in the story. And so there were no mirrors, and they had never seen themselves. And it was part of the story of, one of the characters from this planet had taken off their mask, and turns out it was a girl, so she took off her mask and she was seeing herself for the first time ever, her reflection. And that's an interesting concept to me, and here's what I'm building up to. It fascinates me that for the first 30 40 minutes of my day, obviously doing things and getting out of bed, and I'm in such a rush to go for my walk and dilate and whatever else. I don't, it's like I forget that I've transitioned. I forget who and what I am and how I appear, and it's one of those things. Obviously I have fingernails, I can look down and see my nails, my hands, or whatever. But like when I'm doing stuff early in the morning and I don't have those clues that I've transitioned, it made me wonder somewhat, like the operator of the battle mech, just seeing, not being aware of our reflection, not being aware of the form that we're in. How do we feel about ourselves? If there was no reflection, and let's say we always wore these cloaks and masks, let's say, that hit our facial features and our bodies. You couldn't visually, you couldn't tell a woman from a man. You couldn't, you know what I mean? It would be, as I think, somewhat like the Bible talks about, the Christian Bible, let me rephrase that, talks about, some of them talk about when you die and your soul doesn't have a gender, doesn't have a sex. When you get to heaven, you'll be reborn into a new form. Everyone's going to be reborn into a new form. So there goes the idea of grandma and grandpa in heaven, by the way. I mean, they're reborn, right? I mean, they're all the same rabbit. It's like everyone dies and becomes Squirtle when they go to heaven. So much for grandma and grandpa and mom and dad and your sister. I mean, if you believe in that, as you know them, they no longer exist. They're all cookie cutter, these beings of light, whatever. Of course, that's a very skewed take on it, but possibly. But again, back to the idea of, and I've really got off topic now. What I was alluding to is I forget that I have transitioned. And obviously with my voice, I don't think I really have done anything. Obviously, this is my voice as it's been my voice all my life. I never, I don't feel like I have gone out of my way to change it. Does that make any sense to you? So if you were to take away this mortal coil, as Shakespeare once wrote, if we could take away these physical forms, we would, and perhaps express ourselves in a very, take away that form of presentation, and not to say we all would sound like Siri or a voice box. We would have no personality. But again, what is it that defines us internally? And if we, like I said, when I wake up in the morning, I don't roll out of bed and go, I'm a woman. It's just, I am myself, And I had a thought as I went, and I wasn't fully aware yet. I hadn't woken up fully yet. I needed to take my daughter to school, and I needed to get gas. And there's a reason why I'm sharing this with you. And it wasn't until I got out of the car and I started pumping gas that I looked over into the window of my car reflection, and I saw myself, the woman externally that I have become, looking back at me. And it was like, oh yeah, that's right, I transitioned. And I don't know if other people have, if other trans women, other trans men, do you have that same experience where, like, if you don't look at yourself in the mirror, and obviously fingernails is going to be a bit of a look down and clue, but if you didn't have that, would you realize that you have transitioned? You know what I mean? Like, does it ever pop up? Does it ever, So let me get a swig of coffee here, because I'm going to do something in a minute. What would happen if I'm trying to think. I'm got like three things I'm trying to process here, not very well. Yesterday I felt somewhat disconnected. And when I look at myself in the mirror, I feel more connected, like I have done what I needed to do. And I would almost be curious to see and ask this question: do we change ourselves based on our appearance, our presentation, when we interact with other people? The other day I went to my first CUPS meeting It's the basically pagans by the Universal Unitarian Church, and then I forget what it stands for. I'm sorry. It's like the Council of Unitarian Universalists, pagan something or other. And I sat there in the room, and it was almost funny because I found myself not talking, not communicating, and feeling very feminine, female. And then the leader of the group, we were planning a midsummer ritual, and he had asked a question to me, and he said, Karen, do. And I almost locked up, and I felt like saying, oh shit, now I'm going to talk, and how am I going to sound? Am I going, not blow my cover or be stealthy or pass? That maybe some of that is at play, I don't know. But, it made me question that interaction, that presentation is visually very nonverbal, obviously visual. We have body language and those kinds of things. But I can't really comprehend. Man, I'm doing a terrible job of explaining this. My voice in a different, if you watch some of the other videos, some of the older ones, not so old ones, where I try to soften my voice, or I go into what I would call the upper register. It's very liberating. And I enjoy going into that space, and I question sometimes how realistic it is. Much like at the Cubs meeting. And I forgot what I said. It was something to the effect of he said, how did you find out about us? And the internet. And I said, yes, it was the internet. I Googled you and you came up. Well, male, female. If I popped into my upper register and I said the same thing, and I'll try to do it here, and I'm a little rusty, but if I said, oh, I looked at you on Google and you came right up, that almost sounds a little more contrived. This voice sounds a little more contrived to me. But if again, it's one of those things. If I was able, see, to me, it feels like mentally I'm spinning this character, to interface with other people. But it makes me question, again, I can feel the power building within me, and it's like, this is where I need to be coming out of, but how realistic is that compared to like when I'm working or I'm doing things with other people? And then again, if we were at the meeting, how would I be treated any differently? Or like this morning, when I went to pump my gas, if I met the dude coming out of the convenience store at Circle K, seeing a woman and holding open the door and him saying, you have a good day, ma'am. And I would be able to say, well, you have a good day too. Again, from this space, it lines up a little bit, but then, is it something that's sustainable, And that I don't know. And, again, how much of this is reality? How much of it is perceived reality? And, again, it's, like I said, it almost to me, it feels like an emulation. I'm emulating. Or could you also say that I've peeled away a layer? Peeled away a bit of,
let me rephrase that. Is this persona or is this method of presentation artificial? Is it a mask? Is it a layer, let's say? Or have I taken off a mask or taken off a layer? Or am I opening myself to be more vulnerable? You know what I mean? And so those are the kind of things that I guess, I feel like I want to have the freedom to explore those things. And again, the problem that I have is there are certain things that, if I say, I'm feeling so very sad, I had ordered something on Amazon. This is a true story, by the way. I had ordered a vibrator. It's coming today. Yay. But if I had said, there's something deep inside of me, well, that's really not a good thing to say. I cannot wait to experience sexual fulfillment. That's probably a good statement. Everyone wants to be sexually gratified, right? If I say to a person in passing and I say, I really would like to meet a man who will treat me as the woman that I am because I have needs. I need to be loved. I need to be appreciated. Okay? Now, those are some very sincere emotions. I'm not bullshitting you when I say these things. But if I say to you in this way, I would really like to find someone who will reach in, and validate my existence because I love them. I can say that in this way.
Or if I switch over to the other voice and I say, what did I say? I really would hope to meet someone to authenticate my feelings. I have needs to make me feel like the woman that I am. Is it just me, or is there a bit of I want to say they're both legitimate feelings, okay? But which is reality meshing with better? Does that make any sense? And that was always something that's been something I go back and forth with when I speak in my upper register. The feeling is authentic. The feeling is there. It's just what mode of presentation is it gonna take, and which is the walk like an Egyptian, which is the most authentic. You know what I'm saying? And so again, it's one of those things. And I remember last year with my daughter, I was speaking in my upper register all the time, and it was like she said, every other sentence is okay, but it does get annoying, and I felt like it was weird because it felt so good to interact, to interface on that level, and I guess one could say, is it fair for us to, for example, like with my daughter, to change my voice presentation? You know what I mean? Is it fair? But yet we've changed this other presentation. I don't know. I don't know. It's that's where I need work. Okay, that's my issue. But swear to God, I can't figure it out. As I went for my walk this morning. I did my first dilation and shower, and then I went for my walk, and I'm walking around the block, and I'm sitting there going, my vagina hurts, And again, to say that, again, it's authentic, but I can't imagine meeting someone and I don't know. I made the mention yesterday about the adult or the responsible, and maybe that this is what this presentation is what has carried me through this process. And that's where I feel like the other is a persona. It is a coping mechanism. It is a whatever. But wouldn't it be wonderful to interact that way? And it's possible. I don't know. I remember going to a meeting, a support group meeting, one time, and it was like, people were messing with their voices, and it sounded so terrible to me, and that's what made me come home and say, you know what, fuck it, we're just gonna roll with the voice we got, fuck it, we're just gonna roll with what we got. This is reality. This is the authentic. This is the authentic self. But then you could argue against that. You could say, well, but you transitioned, you took the hormones, you're dressing the part, whatever. You've made your own reality, right? So that I don't know. Oh my goodness. All right, my friends. I'm sorry for babbling so long. I had the idea this morning, like I said, as I was pumping my gas. It didn't dawn on me, and then I looked down and I'm like, yeah, I'm maybe on the one hand we get to the point where we don't see male, female anymore. We just are. Does that make any sense? We just are. We just are ourselves. And I don't know. I made mention too, I bought myself a new dress and whatever. I've never really pampered myself in that way. And I have a number of things coming up. We've got Litha, the Midsummer Ritual, which is going to be in a couple weeks. My daughter's graduation, and like I said, my company picnic. I'm going to wear this new dress too, and shoes and everything. And that was one thing I wanted to feel more girly. Excuse me. I wanted to feel more feminine. I wanted to, and maybe that's what I think about when I think about my upper register voice is going for the next level. Does that make any sense? Is that even a thing? Is there such a thing as the next level? And I don't know. Whew. There are days sometimes I wish well, I wondered about that too. Had I been born a cis girl, how would my voice have developed? Would it be this way? What is it that made, if you think about it from just a genetic point of view, we would speak baby, and I guess I need to do maybe I can do some research on this. How do children's voices develop? I would imagine that it's societal. It's how they're raised. What is their natural voice? It'd be an interesting study. What, as far as pitch goes, children, do they learn it? Is it inherent? Is it, what was it, nature versus nurture? The famous study with the fire truck. Where do our voices, our natural capacity for a voice come in? But then do we hone it for a specific range based off the societal expectations of the gender at the time? Probably. But again, at the same time, I've said this before, women and people come in all different shapes and sizes and voices. And so, again, and obviously without changing the pitch, we do have the ability to soften our voice or to use intonation. Again, if gender is a spectrum, then I think our voices are also a spectrum of intonation, word choice, inflection, and whatever. And I guess that's why I really want to go to a class, a professional, and see what they say. All right, I gotta go. Best of luck to everyone, and until next time, I wish you the best of luck in becoming the best version of yourself as you define it.